How many times have you bought the same bottle of bug spray? You use it, it works for a couple of weeks, and then you're back at the store buying it again. For 4,000 years, farmers solved that whole problem with one flower bed. No bottle. No yearly trip to the store. Just plants. Today, I'll show you the 4 layers that make it work. And there's one layer in here that almost everybody skips. It's the quiet one, tucked at the very end. But it's the layer doing most of the heavy lifting. Stick with me, because we'll get to it, and once you see it, you'll never plant a border the same way again. Here's the thing. I haven't dug this bed myself. What I've done is gather the research across university extensions and published studies and line it up next to the old folk recipes. And you know what? The old recipes hold up. Not all the way, not like magic, but more than you'd think. Now let me be straight with you from the start, because I won't sell you a fairy tale. A living plant is not a spray bottle. The strong numbers you read about, the ones where an oil kills almost every aphid, those come from concentrated plant oils in a lab. Your rosemary bush out in the yard puts out a whole lot less. So this border won't wipe out every bug in your garden. What it does is tilt the odds. It turns one corner of your yard into a place most pests would rather avoid. And that means you reach for the spray way less. That's the honest promise. Let's build it. Here's why this matters. Those plant prescriptions your grandmother swore by, they weren't just folklore. They were the result of thousands of years of regular folks watching what worked and passing it down. Modern chemistry is mostly just naming what those farmers already knew by watching. Take holy basil. The thing that gives it that sharp, clove-like smell is a compound called eugenol. And eugenol shows up in research as a real insect repellent. Or take rosemary. It carries 2 compounds, cineol and camphor, and scientists found they work as a team. One actually helps the other soak in. Grandma didn't have a lab. She had 3,000 years of notes. A lot of you grew up with a garden like this and didn't even know it. Maybe there was a corner of your grandmother's yard that always smelled sharp and green, where the bugs never seemed to bother much. That wasn't an accident. That was know-how, passed down quiet, one season at a time. We're just putting a name to it now. So here's how we're going to build this. 4 layers, back to front. The tall stuff goes in back. The low stuff up front, and every plant has a job and a spot. We'll go one layer at a time, and I'll tell you where each one goes and why. Grab a pen if you like. This is the kind of thing you'll want to write down. Layer 1 is the tall back wall. This is your rosemary. Think of a low rosemary hedge running along the back of the bed, maybe 2 to 4 feet tall. Rosemary is loaded with those 2 compounds we talked about, cineol and camphor, and it gives off that piney smell all season long. In a greenhouse study, rosemary planted next to peppers cut down on thrips, aphids, and whiteflies, and it didn't hurt the good bugs either. Here's your placement tip, and most folks miss it. Plant your rosemary on the windward side, the side the wind usually comes from. That way, the scent drifts across the whole bed instead of just sitting there. Brush your hand along a rosemary bush on a warm afternoon and you'll smell it right away. That's the oils doing their thing. A viewer down in Zone 8 told me her rosemary hedge has been going strong for years with almost no fuss. And getting one in the ground takes about 10 minutes. No special tools needed. Just a shovel and a sunny spot. One quick note on zones. Rosemary is a true perennial. Plant it once, only in Zone 7 and warmer. If you're up in Zone 6 or colder, Grow it in a big pot and bring it inside for winter. No shame in that. A lot of folks do it. Now, you'll see some folks tuck wormwood back there for that silvery leaf. Here's a warning, and this one's non-negotiable. Wormwood is toxic if it's eaten. It's poisonous to cats, dogs, and horses, and it gives off something that can stop nearby plants from growing. For most of us, just skip it and stick with rosemary. That's the safer call. Layer 2 is the middle, and this is your busy zone. 3 plants here: holy basil, lemongrass, and marigold. Holy basil brings the eugenol, that clove smell that's known to throw bugs off the scent trail they follow to find your plants. Lemongrass carries citronella oil, the same stuff in those summer candles, and it leans on mosquitoes. And marigold, the bright orange one, gives off compounds that bug aphids, mosquitoes, and whiteflies. But let me clear up one myth right here, because you'll hear it everywhere. Folks say marigolds kill the bad worms in your soil, the root knot nematodes. Now, you'll hear that, and that's just not true the way people say it. The research is clear. Just tucking a few marigolds between your plants does not control those soil worms. To get that effect, you'd have to grow a whole bed of them for a full season as a cover crop. So plant marigold for the aphids and the colour, not for the soil worms. Honest work, honest claims. Here's something else you need to know about this middle layer. Holy basil, lemongrass, and standard marigold are not true perennials in most of the country. They're tender. So in most zones, you'll replant these each spring, or let the marigolds drop their own seeds and come back on their own. The plant once promise really belongs to the perennial layers. I won't pretend otherwise. And a quick safety note, since I know a lot of you have pets. Lemongrass is listed as toxic to cats, dogs, and horses, so plant it where your animals don't graze. Placement tip for this whole layer: mix the 3 together instead of planting them in solid blocks. The blended smell does more work than any one plant standing alone. Now, before we go to the front of the bed, let's talk about the snakes. Because I know somebody planted a border just like this, hoping to keep snakes away. Maybe your grandmother told you it would. Here's the truth, and it surprised me too. According to extension experts at Colorado State, Mississippi State, and the University of Illinois, no plant reliably repels snakes. None of them. They tested all sorts of remedies, and the snakes just didn't care. And there's a good reason. Snakes don't hunt by sniffing the air the way a dog does. They follow ground vibration, body heat, and the scent trails left by their prey. So was Grandma wrong? Not exactly. Here's the part that's kind of beautiful. She was right that the border helped, just wrong about why. A snake comes into your yard looking for food, and that food is insects and rodents. When your border cuts down on the bugs and you keep the brush and the wood piles cleared out, you've taken away the snake's dinner. No dinner, no reason to hang around. So the border helps with snakes, but it does it the long way, through the food chain. Grandma's instinct was right. The science just fills in the middle. And honestly, this is where this whole approach really shines for families. If you've got grandkids running barefoot in the yard, or a cat that naps in the flower bed, a living border beats a chemical spray every time. You're not laying down something you have to keep away from the little ones. You're just growing plants. That right there is peace of mind. Okay, layer 3. This is the front edge, low to the ground. 2 plants, thyme and mint. Creeping thyme is a true perennial in zones 5 through 9. It stays low and it can take a little foot traffic, so it's perfect for the front lip of the bed. Mint goes here too, because bugs don't love that cool, sharp smell. But listen close. because this is the mistake I see folks make every single time. Mint is a bully. Plant it loose in the ground and it'll take over the whole bed, then the yard, then your neighbor's yard. So here's the fix. Sink mint in a pot, buried in the soil, with an inch or two of the rim sticking up above the ground. That keeps the roots in check. And even then, give it a look once a year for runners trying to escape. Trust me on this one. And here's a little bonus with creeping thyme. Step on it, just a light step, and it sends up that warm, herby smell. It's one of the few plants that actually likes being walked on a bit. Tuck it between a couple of stepping stones and you'll get a whiff every time you pass. These low plants make what you might call a scent carpet, right down at ground level, which is exactly where a lot of crawling pests like to travel. Nice and low, right where they don't want it. Now, remember that layer I told you almost everybody skips? Here it is. Layer 4 isn't a plant at all. It's a rule. And it's the rule that ties the whole thing together. Place your plants by how they release their smell, not just by how they look. Here's why this works. A fragrant plant lets go of its oils when its leaves get brushed or warmed by the sun. So put your most aromatic plants right along the path, at the edge of the bed, where folks walk by and where the afternoon sun hits. Every time someone walks past and grazes a leaf, that plant puffs out a fresh cloud of scent. And keep that back to front, tall to short order, so no plant blocks the breeze from carrying another one's scent across the bed. That's it. That's the layer that does the most work, and it's the one almost nobody plans for. Most people just plant what looks nice. You're going to plant what works. So let's be real about what you get. You won't throw out the spray bottle forever, and anybody who tells you that is selling something. What you get is a bed that pulls its weight. The bugs thin out. You spray a whole lot less. And you've got a border that comes back year after year, at least the perennial bones of it, looking good the whole time. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. Give it a season and watch. And let's talk money for a second, because that bottle adds up. A decent bug spray runs you somewhere around $10 to $15, and you're buying 2 or 3 a season, year after year. That's real money out the door every single summer. A rosemary plant? A few dollars, one time, and it can live for years. You do the math. The garden pays you back. And don't be surprised when your neighbors start asking about it. A border like this looks good doing its job, all silvery greens and orange marigolds. Folks will want to know your secret, and you can tell them it's 4,000 years old. Here's the best part. You don't have to do all of this at once. There's no rush. If this feels like a lot, start with just the back layer. 1 rosemary plant. That's it. Get it in the ground, let it settle, and build outward next season. A little at a time is just fine. So that's the 4-layer perennial border, 4,000 years in the making, and finally backed up by the science. Plant the bones of it once, let the garden do the heavy lifting, and reach for that spray bottle a whole lot less. Grow something good, save yourself a little money, and have some fun out there. Happy gardening.